Okay, it looks like we are live on my end. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Instagram. I'm going to give us a few minutes to allow the numbers to come in. So far, we already have 9 viewers. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you so much for your interest in this topic. Um, we really appreciate you on behalf of the Black Bar Applicant Fund. Um, all right, it looks like we're kind of stagnant at 9 right now. So let's get started. Okay, so my name is Octavia Carson. I am the founder of the Black Bar Applicant Fund. I started the Black Bar Applicant Fund in January 2021. The reason why I set this webinar today on Black Friday is because we want to make sure we're not investing in companies that don't care about DEI, and we're investing in nonprofits such as the Black Bar Applicant Fund that aim to diversify some important professionals, like the lawyer profession, like the legal profession. So the purpose of this webinar is to teach you all about the history of racism and segregation in the legal profession, so that you know a little bit more about how we can move forward and diversify the legal profession, and what the Black Bar Applicant Fund is doing in order to make this happen as well. So let me see. All right. All right. So I am a native of Michigan. I currently live in Maryland. I went to law school in California, specifically in San Diego at Thomas Jefferson School of Law. Um, I am a bar exam abolitionist, and I actually didn't figure that out until 2020 during what I like to call the 2020 bar gate. um, during COVID, several things were happening at once. But for me, I was graduating law school and I was supposed to become an attorney. Um, and instead of taking the traditional route of graduating in May, then taking the bar exam in July, everyone who was a part of my class and a part of my cohort of bar examiners was in a sticky situation where we didn't know if our exam was going to happen in July, if it was going to happen in person or online. Well, I had a lot of time to research and just reflect on what it would look like for me to become a lawyer. And during that time, I actually ended up learning about the racist history of the legal profession, and specifically of the bar exam. Now, I was working with a group of people called United for Diploma Privilege to try to um, take away the bar exam as a requirement specifically for 2020, or bring some sort of alternatives. You'll learn later in this presentation what happened from that. But once we started this really important work, we actually had a bunch of people who were like, how can we donate? How can we get involved? And at that time, United for Diploma Privilege wasn't taking donations. So through my research, I learned that Black people were the most disenfranchised when it came to bar applicants, and who needed financial support. And so I started the Black Bar Applicant Fund to allow the people, the community who wanted to invest in our next generation of lawyers and invest in desegregating the legal profession, and abolishing the bar exam. I started that to give them an avenue to support, and we gained tremendous support. We had nearly $100,000 worth of donations the first 2 years. We gave more than 100 scholarships away, and we had amazing stories from those applicants, people who almost couldn't take their bar exam because they didn't have the money necessary to register. They were able to take their bar exam because we gave them the scholarship and the ability to do that. So let's get started. Um, the things that we're going to talk about today are the history of racial exclusion in the legal profession. We're going to talk about how the bar exam has been a gatekeeping mechanism. And we're going to compare women entering the legal profession versus African Americans. This is a very important comparison that I think will shock everybody. We'll talk about the current statistics. It's important to have the knowledge of, the numbers of peoples and their race coming into the profession, and the trends. Where are those numbers heading? And then we need to talk about solutions and reforms. And then I'm going to read to you the introduction to a book that I am writing and that I am preparing to publish next year. All right. So the mission, first and foremost, of the Black Bar Applicant Fund is to provide financial support to Black people who are studying for the bar exam. We also try to provide them with resources like commercial bar prep tools. And we want to do that in order to raise the rate of Black attorneys so that we are equally represented in the legal profession. We want to address financial, institutional, and psychological barriers to joining the legal profession. And we want to create equitable access to legal licensure. All right. So as of 2023, just a couple of years ago, the ABA put out a profile of attorneys by race. Now, the largest percentage of attorneys were white people at 79%. And as you can see, Black people are at about 5%. Now, that number hasn't changed basically since since Black people were freed and then started to become attorneys back in the late 1800s. We've been stagnant at like 3, 4, then 5% and haven't moved. Like I said, this is important to comparing how women entered the legal profession. I think you'll be very shocked. All right, so what do those numbers look like before Black people become uh, attorneys? I think you'll also be surprised to hear this because Black people actually apply to law school at a slightly higher rate than their presence among college graduates, but then they end up enrolling at lower rates. So, for example, applicants to law school, Black people represent 11.5% of applicants to law school. And then we actually enter into law school at a rate of 7.8% of people entering into law school. Um, there are a number of books where you can learn about the statistics and why, but a good issue is Black people actually getting selected to go to these law schools. And then the people who graduate from law school, Black people comprise 8.5% of those people. And then we're only passing the bar exam at 79%. That is the lowest percentage of all of the races that are included here. And then we are admitted to the bar. So passing the bar exam and then also passing your character and fitness portion. Only seven, we're only 7.8% of the people who are actually admitted, and then only 5.9% of attorneys right now. That came from this book, The Making of Lawyers. Highly recommend if you want to learn more about you know, racism in the legal profession and just in general how different people are treated based on their race, gender, and social economic status before they become attorneys, while they're attorneys, and then what may be pushing them out. All right. Um, so, Black people have had a long road to becoming attorneys. Back in 1844, Macon Bowling Allen was the first African American to become a lawyer. He had an uphill battle to becoming an attorney. They wanted to deny him admission to the main bar, stating that he wasn't a citizen because back then, African Americans were treated as chattel and they were not qualified as citizens. And so he continued to press and persuade the main bar to allow him to become an attorney. And finally, July 3rd, 1844, he became an attorney. So just from the beginning, you can't become an attorney because you're not a citizen. They did not want us to have that status, that knowledge, and the power to become an attorney. And then by 1911, there were three African Americans who became attorneys and actually became members of the American Bar Association. Um, Later, the American Bar Association found out the identity of the three people who were admitted. They found out that they were Black, and it was a big deal. Like, how did this happen? They wanted to immediately strip them of their membership. Now, one of the people who was inadvertently admitted was attorney William H. Lewis. Now, he was a leading attorney in Boston. He was educated at Amherst and he went to Harvard Law School. He was appointed an assistant attorney general, and still he was not good enough to be a member of the American Bar Association. Imagine, even in 1911, you would think that someone who had climbed so high wouldn't be denied access to the American Bar Association membership. But no, they denied him at first, and then people started to complain. There were some people who said he should be able to be a member. And so what happened was the consensus was that we'll allow Attorney Lewis to become a member of the American Bar Association, but he has to acknowledge that his membership was a mistake and that his presence is unwelcome. And that was how he became an official member of the American Bar Association. And then from 1935 to 1963, Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP started to fight in court to desegregate law schools. This is really important because our civil rights leaders started with law school for a reason. They wanted more Black attorneys because they knew that more Black attorneys meant more Black people across the nation that had a vested interest in desegregating everything else, including not just law schools, but medical schools, colleges, and grade schools, high school, middle school, elementary school, public restrooms, just all public institutions. They knew that Black people would have a vested interest, and also they knew that it was powerful to become an attorney. Most most of our public officials are attorneys, and so that's where Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP decided to start with their efforts to desegregate every public institution in the U.S. I highly recommend reading this book. It's called Making Civil Rights Law, and it explains how Thurgood Marshall and members of the NAACP strategically started to try to get civil rights for all people, specifically Black people who were extremely disenfranchised and extremely just treated, awful during those times. All right. And then in 1912, the ABA applicants, if you wanted to become a member, you were required to state your race and your sex, so that they wouldn't make that mistake again with allowing Black people to enter. At that point, they were allowing women to enter into the profession, but they wouldn't document the women until 1918. Um, and they were struggling with whether or not to allow Asian and Native American people to join the American Bar Association, and they ultimately did not. Okay. And then in 1943, the ABA adopted a resolution to make membership not dependent on race, creed, or color. This is a huge breakthrough because now they're publicly stating we won't discriminate based on race and sex. However, even though there's something on the books that says we won't discriminate, the process had already been in the making of pretty much creating barriers that Black people would not be able to overcome. They had already started to have the campaign to make people go through not just law school, but you had to start with undergrad, then you could go to law school, then you could take bar exam. That was not how you entered the profession previously. Previously, you would do a an apprenticeship and maybe some exam, but it wasn't like to the extent of the modern day bar exam. Previously, you could do some schooling, but it would be law school. So yeah, the all of these barriers had already began before they made this statement. All right. I'm gonna stop to see if we have any comments. Looks like we don't have any comments yet, but feel free to leave comments and I will answer questions, any of the questions that you have. Um, all right. So, like I said, we're going to compare um, women entering in the profession to African Americans. This is super important because if women entered at very low rates and then eventually were able to become attorneys at higher rates, almost equivalent to our representation in as citizens in the US, then Black people should be able to do it too. So in between the 1960s and the 1980s is where we see this huge transformation of more women entering into the legal profession. Uh, at the point where there was 3.4% in 1960, uh, women were, you know, becoming law students. They were graduating and barely getting an opportunity to get a job. They were discriminated against because of their sex. However, an important thing happened in the 60s and the 70s. And of course, that's the height of the civil rights era. But that is also when we allowed affirmative action to become the law of the land. So women, specifically white women, benefited from affirmative action, and it's very clear in the numbers from 1970 to 1980. White women jumped from 3.4% of law school graduates to 8.6% of law school graduates. And then by the end of the 1980s, they more than quadrupled their numbers to 34.2% of the legal profession. They were filing lawsuits alleging patterns and practices of discrimination. And these lawsuits, you can bet, were based on civil rights principles and civil rights laws that Black people fought hard for. Definitely not mad at them. Not mad at them. I just wish that it worked for Black people just as well as it worked for them. But if you stay tuned, I will show you how we can also double our numbers, because at this point we just need to double them to at least 13% so that we are equally represented in the profession as we are in the amount of citizens in the US. So today, women represent 39% of the legal profession. They represent white women specifically represent more than 50% of people who are entering law school. So that trajectory hasn't stopped. It's still going up. All right. So here's one of the most um, shocking stories that I found during my research, learning about racism in the legal profession early on during my research. I learned that in 1970, uh, there was a huge story that came out about bias in the Philadelphia bar. Really, it was just blatant racism in the Philadelphia bar. Um, they had Philadelphia specifically had to convene a committee in order to determine what was happening. Why were no Black people passing the bar exam and joining the Philadelphia bar? Obviously, this needed to be a completely independent committee because it was happening from the inside. And the committee came out with a 109-page report that found that the only group that was weeded out by the bar examination were specifically Black people. Um, the examiners used personal data, including photos and names, to discriminate against Black people who sat for the bar exam in Philadelphia. They would sit all Black people in the same row during the exam in order to pick up the test and pretty much immediately know they're going to fail all the Black people that were sitting in that row. And so the study ended up showing that a grossly disproportionate percentage of Black people ended up failing the bar exam in Philadelphia. All right. And then, of course, the conclusion was there is a lacking of any available hypothesis other than race by which to explain these proportions. Um, Now, after this study, um, more Black people started to actually pass the Philadelphia bar exam. But before this study, from 1933 to 1943, no Black people were admitted to the Pennsylvania bar. And that wasn't pointed out until 1954. And even then, nothing was done. Philadelphia had one Black lawyer for every 8,000 Black citizens, but they had one non-Black lawyer for every 800 non-Black citizens. That is astounding. In order for Black people to be able to be represented by someone who looks like them, who may have a similar background as them, they would be in line behind 7,999 other people. That is not fair. And the commission found that the grading process was unfair to all applicants because the exam itself lacked validity. They're not saying just because Black people were weeded out and blatantly discriminated against, the exam was invalid or unfair. It says the exam itself lacked validity. And that's the same exam that we take today. This exam that we're talking about does not actually test whether or not someone is competent to practice law. It's a rote memory examination. If you are able to memorize enough material, you will pass. It's not going to show you if you pass this, you will be a good lawyer. And that by itself is a damning revelation. It should have been taken more serious back in the 70s, but here we are now in 2025, about to be 2026, and we still have people taking an exam that doesn't actually test whether or not someone is competent to study law. Now, there was a mixed reaction to the findings of the study, and people wanted to censor the study, but the Board of Governors ended up accepting the report and they endorsed the recommendations of the people in the committee. Let's see. I think we have a few questions. I'm going to have Mia, my co-host read the questions for us.
Thank you, Octavia. This has been amazing so far. Thank you so much for offering such a great webinar with this really important information. The first question that came through was, quote, "There are poor white people also, so how and why do you think their bar passage is 15% higher than Black law students?"
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, poverty is a huge factor to, why someone isn't able to properly prepare for the exam. And I think that it's hard to explain why um, poor white people may or may not be passing at the same rate because there's not enough data. There That's one of the things that I call for by the end of this presentation is for our bar examiners to give us more data so that we can determine what's affecting people's ability to pass. But at the end of the day, like I said, is the exam by itself is invalid. Um, and so I think that people across all socioeconomic backgrounds would have a more fair chance if we just didn't have the bar exam and instead had internships, for example. I give a couple of alternatives, but someone actually learning how to practice law from an attorney who's practicing and someone actually getting real life experience would be much better than making people take an expensive exam. Now, you can, at this point, in most places in the US, you can graduate from law school without stepping foot in a courtroom, without having a meaningful conversation or shadowing an attorney. You could just graduate law school and then pass the bar exam. That's not fair.
Thank you. The next question is, are there alliances or organizations that support Black law students mentally and socially during the study period?
Um, the Black Bar Applicant Fund is the only alliance that I know of that is supporting people as they're studying specifically for the bar exam. I know there's the Black law student associations at different schools that will support people throughout, their time in law school. I'm not sure how much attention is given to the members after they graduate and while they're studying for the bar exam, but the Black Bar Applicant Fund has teamed up with other bar exam mentors and coaches to give our applicants resources so that they can mentally prepare for the bar exam. But honestly, the resources are they're barely any out there. So right now I would say the Black Bar Applicant is the organization that's providing that resource.
All the more reason for everyone who's watching to donate whatever you're able to. And if you're not able to donate yourself, maybe you could, collect some funds together with a group and make a donation to this amazing, amazing organization. The next
Yes,
question
yes.
that we have for you, Octavia, is what would a truly equitable pipeline look like if it started in pre-K to 12? And how should law schools and bar organizations take responsibility for those earlier stages?
So, as I mentioned earlier in the slide, it's amazing that we actually have a high amount of Black people applying to law school. It's very clear that Black people want to be a part of the profession and they want to be lawyers specifically. Now, we do need more pipelines that show young Black people that it is possible for them to become attorneys. I myself have volunteered with a moot court at a high school, and I thought that was an amazing way to motivate the kids to become attorneys. I think that more High schools should have a moot court or career days where attorneys can speak to them, and then opportunities for kids to go to camps that will teach them about becoming attorneys. So those are different types of pipelines that we can create, and that our schools can participate in from pre-K to 12th grade. Now, law schools and bar organizations can take responsibility by helping to fund those earlier stage moot courts, classes, field trips, career days, things like that. And then they can also just make sure they're sending people to be there. Black people specifically show that we are here and we want more Black attorneys. So, one thing I also wanted to mention was if you would like to donate, we have a QR code at the top of the page to the left that will allow you to donate to our PayPal um, account. All right, going back if there's no questions.
Those are all the questions for the moment.
All right. All right, let me just take these comments down so that you can see the presentation again. All right. And one quick plug, we have a fiscal sponsor called Scholarship Junkies. Well, now it's Scholar Fund, previously called Scholarship Junkies, and that is how we have our 501(c) status. If you donate and you would like to receive tax credits for your donation, you should get a receipt after you donate that would allow you to claim it on your taxes. But if you do not get that receipt, just send to us a message when you go to blackbarapplicantfund.org, or you go to our Instagram page. You have the ability to leave us an email or a comment. All right, so what happened? Um, let's see, in 1979, when a young Matthew Perry sought to become an attorney. Let's see if this video, I don't think the video will show. Um, this is a really cool video that you can watch on YouTube. I don't want to take up more of the time, but when you look at this video, you'll hear the story of Matthew J. Perry and how he was a part of the first set of law students in South Carolina, Black law students, excuse me, in South Carolina. And before his class graduated, there was no bar exam in South Carolina. Then, as his class was graduating, the South Carolina um, bar said they needed to do something about Blacks and undesirable whites, that they specifically did not want Blacks and undesirable whites to become part of the profession. And in this video, Uprooting History, he says, you can thank me. If you're in South Carolina, you have to take the bar. You can thank me for having to take the bar because there was no bar exam um, before he graduated. So there are real life accounts of people who saw that change from, no bar exam because there's no Black attorneys to all of a sudden there's a bar exam because there are Black attorneys. All right. And then this story was documented in Ebony magazine in December 1974. The title of it was called The Whys Behind Black Lawyer Shortage. So since, the early 1900s, we've been trying to figure this out. And once again, I will point out we're in 2026 and we're still trying to figure out, why is there a Black lawyer shortage? This particular article is interesting though because a few Black Bar examiners or Black Bar applicants were actually suing the bar. They sued the Alabama bar and they sued the Georgia bar. Um, Now, there in 1972, uh, there was an applicant, Henry L. Thompson. He graduated from Harvard Law School and he failed the Alabama bar exam 3 times in 2 years. He and other plaintiffs sued the Alabama Board of Bar Examiners. Only 28 out of 3,410 attorneys were Black, and that was because of, well, he said that was because of discrimination. That was his argument. The court ruled that there was no discrimination. Um, and this article specifically cited to the earlier 1970 Pennsylvania Commission report that I was just talking about just before this, because they're trying to figure out, hey, is this something that all of the bars are doing across the country? Because something is not adding up. And I agree with them. Um, and an Illinois appellate court judge said that uh, he believes examiners used to discriminate, but they don't do it now, because if they do it now, they'll get in trouble. That's not how that works. If they used to discriminate and they haven't actually had any sort of um, deterrent for discriminating, then they're probably still going to discriminate. Um, ACLU and some other attorneys sued, saying that the bar exam blocked Black people from practicing law. And one of the arguments was that even though bar candidates received um, numbers for the exams, the numbers were not connected to their names. Well, even though they got numbers saying, like, you're applicant number 2, that number was connected to their name, their image, and other data that was submitted to their character and fitness test. So there was a way to identify an applicant as a Black applicant or a non-Black applicant. And the examiner's counter argument was, no way, they didn't discriminate because these were honorable men. Once again, we're not having a fair conversation. No one actually is doing anything. Now, this was one of the quotes from that article that stuck out to me. It says, why does a Black student who has successfully completed all of his courses through high school, college, and law school suddenly find that he is unable to pass the one final examination that permits him to engage in his chosen profession? I don't suggest there should be no Black failures at the examination, but is it too much to expect that the failures will embrace such enormous proportions? A white judge from Pennsylvania once explained about Blacks, but they don't read quickly. They don't think quickly, which prompts me to remark, how do you think they arrived at the point to take the bar examination? And I really just thought that was a very profound quote from attorney Edward Bell. He was one of the people who was representing the Black people that were suing their bars for discrimination. And it's often, even till today, stated, well, maybe they're just not good enough. Maybe people aren't passing the bar exam because they're just not good enough. And that's not true. This is the one exam you need to take in order to become a licensed attorney after um, more than 7 years of postgraduate schooling at least. And you can't pass that one exam. I find that very hard to believe. I find it very hard to believe that someone wouldn't be qualified after all those years of schooling. But once again, that is a issue that I think internships could solve. Um, and then they also included statistics in that Ebony magazine article. And the statistics showed the percentage of Black bar passers versus white bar passers. In Alabama, it was 20 to 70. So um, the number of bar passers was totally outweighed. Like only 20% of Black people were passing the bar exam. 43% of Black people were passing the bar exam in California. Maryland, only 6% of Black people were passing the bar exam. Sorry, 6%. Yes, 6% of Black people were passing the bar exam. 8% in Ohio, 15% in South Carolina, 20% in Virginia. These are very, very low numbers. And once again, there's only one Black lawyer for every 7,000 Black Americans. And for white Americans, there's one white lawyer for every 637 Black Americans. We have an issue where Black people cannot have representation by people who look like them or who have similar backgrounds and stories as them. Let me see. It looks like we got some more questions here. I'll come back. We'll come back and answer the new question soon. I'll just keep going because we're almost there at the end. Um, so if we compare the numbers to today, we'll see that they haven't changed much. In California, still, if someone goes to an ABA accredited school, this was back in 2022, I believe, 2023, actually, 48% of Black people who went to an ABA accredited school passed the bar exam. 27% of Black people who went to California approved school passed the bar exam. And from unaccredited schools, no Black people passed the bar exam. California is one of the unique states that has that allows unaccredited schools to continue to run. Maryland doesn't report statistic by race, nor does Ohio, South Carolina, or Virginia. This is an issue. In order for us to keep track of whether or not we're actually making important institutional changes to, solve the issue of racism in the legal profession, we need to see the numbers. And so one of the things that people can do today is call their local bar. I'm a part of Maryland bar, I'm a part of California bar, and I'm a part of the DC bar. We need to call our bar examiners. We need to call the people who are members and leaders on the board of our bar, and we need to ask them to start keeping track of important things like race and social economic status of their bar passers or the bar takers and bar passers so that we can track and make sure that we're headed in the right direction. And as of today, we're getting closer to having better representation for Black people. Um, you know, for us to be able to be represented by someone who looks like us, but it's still we're still not we're still not there. Okay, so what's the solution? How can we end systemic racism in the legal profession? One of the things we can do is to change the education requirements for attorneys. Now, the reason why we have a requirement for people to go to undergrad and then to law school and then take the bar exam is because in the early 1900s, the ABA was trying to solve this issue that they were perceiving that they had of Black people joining the profession, non-white people joining the profession. In order to solve that issue, they wanted to make it so that people had to go to school for longer. And also another thing they wanted to do was make the legal profession more elite. They were more concerned about the impression people had of the elitism in the profession versus whether or not people had access to a competent lawyer. And one of the quotes that really shows they were embracing this idea is what they said: one way in which an occupation can document its high status is by being able to take its pick of the young people about to enter the labor market and then keep them in school a long time before admitting them to the charm circle. Once again, it's all about looks. How prestigious do we look? And not about, are we representing our people well? Are we actually providing competent legal services to people? And are we allowing people to be represented by people who have a similar background as them? And then another quote that I pulled out is, lawyers would be unable to weed out the unfit from their profession unless they followed the lead of the medical profession. Medicine had gained the greatest respect by making every man go through medical college. We must have the same rule in regard to law students. Now, I'm not saying that um, it's not worth it for people to go to school. I'm just saying that we have to be more intentional about that. Currently, when you go to law school, you have to have your college degree. You have to have graduated from undergrad, but there's no specific requirement for what sort of degree you have. So it's almost as if, we just want to see you make it through 4 years before you come and go to school for 3 more years. In most other countries, if you want to become a lawyer, you just go straight to law school rather than undergrad. And I think that would be a way to make it more fair and more affordable for people to become attorneys. Um, and then back in the day, they just used to have an apprenticeship. And this system could possibly still work in some areas where we have what's called legal deserts. So in rural areas, there is a very high shortage of attorneys. They don't have people who could represent them in divorces and criminal cases, um, and really important steps of their lives, because most attorneys don't want to go there. There's no law school close by. And so things that could solve this is going back to allowing the apprenticeship model to exist in those areas, and then having other ways to measure whether or not someone has become competent enough. Um, One of the quotes that I picked out for that says, starting in 1891, the apprentice system began transferring gatekeeping from elite lawyers to law schools by requiring 3 years of legal education before bar admission. Now, the apprentice system was not perfect either, because there were elite lawyers who were choosing who could be apprentices for them. But if we had other ways to promote attorneys using apprentices, then we can make sure that that is fair and equal as well. And so the quotes from this page come from this book. It is called Best Men of the Bar. This is a great book to learn about the history of the American Bar Association, and it includes those different quotes and statistics that show that there was a big prevalence of racism throughout the American Bar Association, through their decision makings, their leaders, and how they spoke about who they wanted to enter the profession. This book is not about, it's not about racism in the legal profession. That's not the big idea of it. But you can't tell the story of the start of the legal profession without talking about racism and discrimination, because it was so important for these gatekeepers to ensure that they kept out Black people. Okay. Another solution is for us to change the accreditation requirements for law schools. Now, during that early period of the ABA, the early 1900s, another solution for them to weed out Black people and undesirable whites from the legal profession was for them to have all of these different accreditation requirements for law schools. And this made it so that all of the Black law schools and the law schools for poorer people, and for disadvantaged people, had to close because they couldn't meet the accreditation requirements. But in the early 1900s, before the civil rights era, before Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP was desegregating law schools, the only option for Black people was to go to a Black law school. And so now you have less Black people going to law school because the Black law schools are getting closed and they're not there anymore. These accreditation requirements for law school, they were inspired by the 1910 Flexner Report. This report was for medical schools because the medical profession had a similar motivation to get rid of Black people and non-white people from joining their profession. So they came up with a Flexner report. The Flexner report promoted all of these heavy accreditation requirements for medical school, and then promoted the standardized testings and things like that. And so the ABA said, well, it's working for the medical profession, let's do it for us. And so that's when the ABA decided to come out with the Reed report. That was our version of the Flexner report. And that came out in 1921. The ABA wanted to have the same result as medical schools. The Flexner report led to 75% of medical schools being closed. And the ABA was hoping they would do the same. Sure enough, so many, law schools were closed um, after the Reed report came out. And by 1923, the ABA began to issue a list of standards, and only the approved law schools would be able to continue to teach um, after they met those standards. Many have said that these standards have resulted in the dissolution of schools that cater to non-white people and non-wealthy law students, which honestly is such a shame that we know this information and we're, for the most part, our profession is not doing anything about it. Number three, finally, what can we do? We can change or abolish the bar exam. The bar exam was used as a gatekeeping mechanism, and it has continued. No Jim Crow era law should be reformed. Jim Crow era laws should be abolished. They should not be replaced by something else that is equivalent. Instead, we have to think about being intentional to make sure that people are represented by competent lawyers, but that uh, it's not a system that is so heavily ingrained in racism. Now, Wisconsin never enacted a bar exam. They've always had diploma privilege. They do have a bar exam for out of state um, applicants. But if you go to school in Wisconsin, go to law school in Wisconsin, you graduate from law school in Wisconsin, as soon as you graduate, you have your license to practice. So that is, Wisconsin is like our base model. We can look at Wisconsin and we can see what is creating competent lawyers there besides the bar exam, because they have competent lawyers practicing um, that haven't taken the bar exam, and they have pretty much equal rates of discipline when it comes to attorney misconduct, which is showing that regardless of if you have a bar exam or not, you're going to have some bad apples, people who are not following the rules. All right, so what's our progress now towards making a better, more equal legal profession? Well, in response to COVID and to the United for Diploma Privilege efforts, Washington, D.C., Washington State, Oregon, Utah, and Louisiana temporarily provided an alternative to the bar exam, which was diploma privilege. If you were registered to take the bar exam in those states, you did not have to take the bar exam. You were able to get diploma privilege. That was back in 2020 during COVID. People became licensed with diploma privilege by 2021. And then California reduced their pass score for the bar exam, and then they retroactively applied that all the way back to applicants who took the bar exam in 2017. And this was huge. People whose careers were delayed for years finally began to become licensed, all because the pass score was lowered and retroactively applied. They also enacted a provisional licensure program allowing people to be licensed as attorneys until they took the bar exam. And some people to this day are still fighting to keep their license in California without having to go back and take the bar exam. Another solution was the next gen bar exam, but remember, we cannot simply replace the bar exam with some other form of a bar exam. This is a historically racist method of licensing attorneys, and it simply can't be replaced by another reformed bar exam. But the next gen bar exam is supposed to be less about rote memory and more about actually having people practice analyzing issues and using material that's in front of them rather than memorizing everything. Since COVID, we've made even more progress. The reason why I can sit here today and say it is completely possible for us to abolish the bar exam and possible for us to get more Black lawyers is because it's working right now. Washington State now has an alternative to the bar exam. That is the law of the land in Washington State right now. So people can opt out of taking the bar exam. And when they made that decision, Washington Supreme Court said the bar exam negatively impacts minorities and they will no longer require it for lawyers. This is what we need. We need to get our higher courts, our attorneys that have been in leadership positions to say and to see the problem and call it out that the bar exam negatively impacts minorities and then to provide us alternatives. In Oregon, no bar exam is required to practice law. The same goes for Minnesota and Utah. So now we have Wisconsin, Washington State, Oregon, Minnesota, and Utah that all have alternatives to the bar exam. We are making progress, and I'm not sitting here today just thinking of some like far out idea. This solution is at our fingertips. We are prepared to move forward in each jurisdiction and fight to abolish the bar exam and to have alternatives so that more minorities, more Black people have a fair shot at becoming attorneys. Now, we're going to go to some questions before I discuss my book introduction. And I'm going to bring on my co-host again.
I am so impressed with the progress that we have been able to make, but obviously there's a lot more work to do, and every donation is going to help with that. A lot of times we think that a problem is too big for us to be able to do anything, but look what one woman with one idea and one mission has been able to accomplish. Now, I'm specifically saying that because the next question that somebody posed was, well, you're just one person, one fund. Do you have support and membership from prominent attorneys or organizations with influence over your mission?
Yes, that is a great question. Since from the beginning, we've had thousands of people donate, and the amazing thing is that we had commercial bar examiners on our side since the beginning. We are very thankful to companies like Barbary and Themis and Kaplan who donated um, commercial bar prep classes to our applicants and donated funds as well. Specifically, back in 2021, Barbary donated more than $20,000 American dollars to our fund. They backed us, they believed in us. And then we did a survey of our applicants together, and we discovered that a lot of them needed the bar prep materials. and the courses. These courses can run up to $5,000. And they are absolutely necessary for you to be able to study for the bar exam. And so Barbary donated 20 courses to our bar applicants. Themis donated 5 each semester. So we have an exam in July and in February. Themis would donate 5 each year from 2021 to 2022. And then we've had, like I said, other commercial bar prep companies, some mentors donate time. And yeah, we have people backing us in high places. And so they believe in the mission. They see all of the information that I put out there, and they're prepared to answer the call to action. And I hope that everybody, all 15 of the people that are watching, maybe even more, are also prepared to donate. I put a link, a QR code up at the top of the screen. You can click on that QR code. You can go to blackbarapplicantfund.org and donate now. Donate $5, $10, 20. I will tell you that $500 will make a meaningful contribution, because I'll be able to give one applicant a scholarship from that money, from that
Well,
contribution.
that leads us right into the next question. Beautiful segue. What are you going to do with my donation? Where's my money going? But as Octavia just said, there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just the test, it's the course materials, it's the study materials, it's the ebook. You have to actually borrow a laptop to take the bar exam, and that costs money. You have to get a tutor. So there's a lot of things that, you say bar exam, but there's so much more to it. Let me not take your spotlight. Octavia, you answer the question.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because that does remind me. That's one of my points that I try to remember to make to people. When I was taking the bar exam back in 2020, I was told, get a separate computer. And I'm so happy they told me that, because you have to download this software on your computer called ExamSoft. And it actually was corrupting people's computers. I don't, maybe it was not on purpose or whatever, but it was corrupting people's computers, causing them to lose data. And just with any software that you download, you want to be careful. And so I went out and rented a computer during that time. It was very expensive. Most people don't have money in their bank. Luckily, I had scholarships from when I was in law school. Different bar associations gave me scholarships to study for the bar exam. And that's how I was able to pay for my resources. I calculated it. I spent more than $22,000 studying for the bar exam. And that is because I was in the 2020 period where our exam just kept getting moved. We went from having an exam in July to it moving down to August, September, and then finally October. Luckily, I was able to get diploma privilege because I was registered in Washington, D.C. while we were making that effort to get diploma privilege. And then my job told me, we still want you to take a bar exam. So I took the California bar in February 2021 and I passed, but I calculated it and I spent more than $22,000 studying for the bar exam. On average, people spend $15,000 studying for the bar exam. That's because you have to spend 10 weeks, 40 hours a week studying for the bar exam. And they recommend that you don't work during that time. So if you're not working, you're paying for your housing, you're paying for your food, you're paying any other existing bills like your phone bill, and you're purchasing these bar prep courses that can cost you $5,000. Maybe even you pay for a tutor. You gotta have therapy. You gotta have medical services. The bill just racks up. And so we want to help our applicants as much as we can. I know that $500 can go a long way because the registration fee itself can range from $400 to $1,200 California being one of the higher on the higher end, Georgia being one on the lower end at 400. I believe DC is a little bit less than that, but you still have to pay that registration fee plus your moral character and fitness fee. So we want to try to help, knock off some of these fees little by little. And so your donations are going towards people's bar prep fees, their living expenses, but also towards making sure that our fund can continue to scale and help people on another level for years to come until we are able to meet our mission, which is having an equal representation for Black people in the legal profession. I'm going to go to the next comment.
Well, the next comment is from Naji Mujahid. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. They want you to know that you are doing a great job. Also, Trisha B said the Black Bar Applicant Fund stands as a powerful force in empowering future lawyers. This mission-driven organization truly deserves to be supported. Thank you, Trisha.
Thank you, Trisha. There's one more I see that's here on the screen. Najee said, studying for the bar exam is a full-time job. Some people have to take out the highest interest loans in order to do it. Great point, Najee. The crazy thing is, because you've graduated from law school by the time you're studying for the bar exam, you can't get a student loan to study for the bar exam. You have to take out a personal loan. And so now you are getting a loan at a higher interest rate, and that can't be deferred the same way that a student loan can be deferred. It doesn't, all those rules for student loans don't apply to this bar exam loan because it's post school, it's not an educational loan. All right. And then also, Najee said it's a whole category. Sally Mae calls them bar loans, which is what I just said. Um, they're called bar loans, but they're not equivalent to student loans. And when you're getting ready to graduate from law school, your financial advisor gives you a whole conversation about taking out a bar loan as if it should be the standard. It should not be the standard. Either your community should support you, your school should try to support you and use some of your school fees to help cover these bar study materials and expenses, or we just need to abolish the whole exam because it's just not economically sustainable. What I call it is the bar mafia. They're creating this hurdle and at the same time benefiting from it immensely. The people who put on the bar exam, they're called the NCBE, the National Conference of Bar Examiners. National Conference of Bar Examiners is headquartered in Wisconsin, the only state that did not enact an in-state bar examination for their in-state graduates, has the headquarters for the NCBE. And the president of the NCBE was making, back in 2020, 2021, she might be making more. She was making $300,000 annually as her salary off of profiting off of administering this bar exam that is wreaking havoc financially for so many people. And then on top of that, she herself never took a bar exam because she graduated from school in Wisconsin and became a lawyer through diploma privilege. I call it the bar mafia. They're making so much money off the backs of hardworking people that have taken so much time to go through law school and already took all these exams just to make them go through one more hoop that doesn't even test competence. You saw it in the presentation in 1970. Philadelphia's commission said that the exam wasn't even valid. So where are we going? Where are we going? Um, let's just continue with the presentation. Um, I wanted to read my introduction to my book so that you all can see what I'm coming out with. I want you all to be able to pre-order books when the time comes. You'll get an email if you're signed up for our emails. You'll see on our social media when we are preparing to sell the pre-orders. You'll be able to see that. Um, but for now, I want you to be able to hear what I have written so far, and the proceeds that we'll make from the book will help to raise money and awareness for the Black Bar Applicant Fund. Let me see. This is what the cover of the book looks like. In the introduction says, "When I was 12 years old, a cop in a clerical error planted the seeds of my life's work. I was on the phone with my mom. My grandmother was with me. We were just yapping away while mom was driving to the bank from her hair salon. She was stopped by a police officer who ran her tags. Then he said that she had a warrant out for her arrest. He put my mother in handcuffs. He put her in the back of the police car and proceeded to look through her bag. When he saw that she had a lot of money, I heard him questioning her about it as if she was doing something wrong. I heard my mom ask more questions about this warrant. It was someone who had the same name as her, but it was actually a white woman who lived in a different area of Michigan. Eventually, he let her go, but he was very mean about it. And when my mom tried to call the station to complain about this terrible interaction with the police officer, they just didn't do anything about it. And I couldn't do anything. They didn't care. But to this day, I still do. Growing up Black in America meant frequent, unwarranted traffic stops and an early education in how power works and who wields it. But it also meant seeing possibility. I was definitely a huge fan of The Cosby Show, of Felicia Rashad playing this very smart, very accomplished, very successful attorney. And I thought it was amazing that it was a Black family with a lawyer in the house. So seeing characters like that were definitely influential and made it look possible for me as a little Black girl to envision myself doing that. I want to tell you another story now. Imagine along with me that right now somewhere in America a brilliant Black law student is deciding whether they can afford to take the bar exam. Graduating from law school was no small accomplishment. They put in years of hard work studying a difficult subject that demands clear thinking, mental stamina, and strong verbal skills to advocate within the bounds of ethics. Along the way, they learn how to break down complicated problems, make sense of dense rules, and communicate ideas with clarity. Law school taught them to recognize issues, to understand conflicts, rights, and responsibilities, and to work toward fair and practical solutions. However, their next step is neither fair nor practical. It's a gatekeeping mechanism. Rather than critical skills such as legal research, factual investigation, client counseling, cultural competency, negotiation, and ethical judgment, the bar exam is a high pressure memorization test covering far more subjects than most lawyers will ever practice under extreme time pressure. The exam structure and subject range bear little resemblance to the specialized or supervised typical, supervised practice typical of modern legal work, but every law student has to take it. The universal bar exam itself costs hundreds of dollars. The commercial bar prep courses run between $3,000 and $5,000. I call them the bar mafia because they charge people registration fees, laptop usage fees, etc. If you want to get a copy of your exam, if you want to get a copy of your results, if you want to download a document stating that you're in good standing, you have to pay for all of these things. 3 months of full-time study with no income. That means draining what little savings they have, taking on more debt, or working nights and weekends while trying to commit to memory thousands of pages of materials. And if they don't pass on the first try, which happens to half of all test takers, they have to pay the same fees every single time they take it. And the background check only lasts for a certain period of time. The exam is only offered twice a year, and most applicants need to recover afterwards. Now imagine that they tried to take the bar but didn't pass the second time either. They choose to go back to working as a police officer while continuing to try to pass the bar exam for the next 8 years. 8 years, going deeper and deeper into debt and self-doubt. They finally passed the bar and immediately excelled in their legal career. Today, they are a judge. This is a true story of someone I know who could have been in position to positively affect people's lives, to make a real difference in her community 8 years sooner. The legal profession in America has a long history of exclusion masquerading as merit, of admission standards shaped by the cultural belief of Anglo-Saxon superiority. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the barriers were explicit. Many law schools openly refused admission to blacks, women, and other marginalized groups. When formal discrimination became untenable, subtler mechanisms emerged to preserve the profession's homogeny. The shift from diploma privilege and apprenticeships to written bar examinations coincided with rising immigration and efforts to restrict women, people of color, and religious minorities from entering the legal profession. While ostensibly measuring competence, it functioned and continues to function as an expensive, culturally biased filter that disproportionately excludes candidates who cannot afford multiple attempts, expensive bar prep courses, or months without income to study. The result is a legal profession that remains overwhelmingly white despite decades of civil rights progress. Black attorneys constitute less than 5% of lawyers, while Black Americans represent over 13% of the population. This disparity is not accidental, but the product of deliberate choices by those who value power more than justice. Judicial interpretations lacking varied perspectives calcify injustices into precedent. Laws drafted without diverse input fail to anticipate their desperate impacts. When entire populations cannot see themselves reflected in those who wield legal power, faith in the justice system itself erodes. Legal diversity is an essential democratic infrastructure. Research consistently shows that diverse legal teams produce better outcomes. They identify biases in jury selection, recognize discriminatory patterns in policing and sentencing, understand the lived realities of marginalized clients, and challenge assumptions that perpetuate inequality. Right now, talented Black law graduates are choosing other careers because they simply cannot afford the bar exam process. Every year that passes without intervention is another cohort we lose, another generation of attorneys who might have changed the profession but have to choose survival over dreams. I founded the Black Bar Applicant Fund in January of 2021. I was volunteering and working with the Coalition United for Diploma Privilege. People wanted to help, to give us donations, and I started thinking there's a need for financial scholarships for Black people studying for the bar exam. I had already put the pieces together that the bar exam was racist, that Black people are underrepresented in the legal profession, and that with law school we graduate law school with the highest amount of debt. The social media post where I explained why I started the community fund for Black Bar applicants went viral. Donations were flooding in, along with applications from people who needed financial support to take the exam. I got volunteers to help me, and then I got fiscal sponsor to help me administratively and to have an official nonprofit bank account. Our mission is to provide financial assistance and resources to Black Bar applicants so that they can pass the bar exam. And we also want to diversify the legal profession by advocating for policy change in order to have an equal representation of Black attorneys in the United States. I feel overwhelmingly grateful for the people who have supported BBAF, Black Bar Applicant Fund, since the very beginning because it was just an idea. It was just a website. Over 100 scholarships have gone out, and they have been in the amounts anywhere from $500 average emergency funds to the revamped 2024 merit need-based scholarships of up to $2,000. The Black Bar Applicant Fund removes money as a barrier. Scholarships cover bar exam fees, prep courses, and living expenses during study periods. Recipients join a growing network of Black attorneys who support each other, mentor the next cohort, and work to reform the system from within. Every scholarship becomes a practicing attorney who might prosecute hate crimes, defend wrongly accused clients, draft legislation protecting voting rights, or mentor 10 more law students who thought this career was out of reach. Every donation creates a multiplier effect that extends far beyond one individual passing one test. Investment in diversifying the legal profession means investing in better outcomes for everyone. Funding the attorney who will one day argue a case that establishes new civil rights protections. Supporting the public defender who will expose wrongful convictions. Enabling the corporate lawyer who will push for equitable hiring practices. Backing the judge who will bring a different perspective to the bench. Shoring up the legal infrastructure that makes democracy work for all citizens, not just some. The vision I have for the future is straightforward: a legal profession where Black attorneys make up 13% of the bar, matching the Black population. Every qualified law graduate has a fair shot at passing the bar, and the justice system actually represents the people it serves. This vision is achievable, but it requires collective action from people who understand what's at stake. Our country has become a little better because of diversity. You can thank the civil rights movements for feeling free and comfortable, no matter what your skin color is, to walk into a business. You can thank the civil rights movement for having disability benefits and accommodations. You can thank the civil rights movement for being able to get FMLA leave. You can thank the civil rights movement for even being able to have the unions that you have now in the manner that you have them. Before, they were kind of like white boys clubs, but now they actually work for people. You don't have to be a civil rights activist to care about this issue. You don't need to work in law or know anyone who does. You simply need to recognize that you have a stake in fair representative legal system, because that system shapes your life, whether you interact with it directly or not. I would say that one of my biggest influences was actually a politician, Shirley Chisholm. She was my idol growing up, and watching her as a lawmaker just make so much noise and be the first woman on a Democratic ticket to run for president and make it as far as she did, that was my major influence. I knew I connected the dots that becoming an attorney could position me to eventually be in politics. I understood something crucial. Representation matters. Representation matters means that having people who look like you and have a similar background to you creates a safe space and a place where you feel more like you will be more likely to be understood. The laws that govern your workplace, protect your rights, determine your children's education, regulate your healthcare, and define your freedoms were all written, interpreted, and enforced by lawyers and judges. If those lawyers and judges all come from similar backgrounds, they bring similar assumptions, blind spots, and priorities. When the bar diversifies, the law becomes more responsive, more just, more representative, and more equitable. Attorneys become public defenders who protect the accused, prosecutors who decide whom to charge, civil rights advocates who challenge injustice, corporate counsel who shape business practices, judges who interpret our rights, and legislators who craft our laws. The question isn't whether this work matters. The question is whether you will make it happen. So, if you care about diversity in politics, not even just skin color, but a diverse array of thought, then you can help to diversify the legal profession, to grow and shape the next generation of lawmakers, from desegregating schools to securing voting rights to diversifying corporate boardrooms. Progress has always required help with resources to invest in change. Systemic change doesn't require everyone to do everything. It requires enough people to do something. Your donation doesn't change one person's trajectory. It affects who sits on judicial benches, who argues for equal justice in courtrooms, who drafts legislations that impact your neighborhood, who runs for political office, who heads big corporations, and ultimately who shapes American justice for centuries to come. Just imagine how far we could go next if we diversify the legal profession. If our goals, our mission, our vision for the Black Bar Applicant Fund is realized within the next 10 years, it will change the story for a different 12-year-old child. A mother will be able to call a Black attorney like myself. That attorney would believe the mother who was discriminated against, because that attorney would know socially what happens when a police officer pulls us over. That attorney would understand what it looks like and what that feels like, and zealously advocate for justice on behalf of that 12-year-old's mom. That was the first portion, the introduction of the book that I am publishing next year. You will be able to pre-order that book, and you'll be able to support the Black Bar Applicant Fund and learn more about the injustices that we faced as Black people trying to join this profession. You will be able to participate in the next steps. What you need to do now is to, um, hold on, let me go back to the front just so you can see. Um, you need to donate. The link is here. That QR code will allow you to donate. You can also go to blackbarapplicantfund.org, and click the donate button. You can volunteer. We have applications. If you go to our Instagram account, there's a link to a volunteer application in the bio. Also, if you go to our website, where you can also donate. You can also apply to volunteer. You can email us. You can message us directly. I need volunteers to help with fundraising, to help with building our board so that we can break away from the fiscal sponsor and become our own 501(c)(3). And so we need volunteers just as much as we need donations. Share about our fund to other people. Follow Black Bar Applicant Fund everywhere: Instagram, Twitter. It's Black Bar App Fund. Facebook, it's Community Fund for Black Bar Applicants. And YouTube, it's Black Bar Applicant Fund. And then we're going to email you all a survey where you can help us to figure out how to make our webinars and our lessons even better going forward. Another thing that we have for you all, if you would like to also show your support for the Black Bar Applicant Fund, you can purchase one of these enamel pins. I just put up the QR code for you to put in your order for the enamel pin. It is $20, but that covers all of your taxes and shipping costs. So $20 flat, and you'll be able to get an enamel pin. If you want to bulk order these, just message us and we can figure out a way to get a bulk order for you so that you can share with your family, friends, co-workers, things like that. We want to be loud and proud about our support for Black lawyers and for the Black Bar Applicant Fund. And with this pin, with this enamel pin, you can both support the Black Bar Applicant Fund with the proceeds going to the fund, and also show others that you support Black lawyers and Black bar applicants. Okay, we have one more comment. It says, "This is excellent. Thank you, Octavia. I really appreciate it." I'm gonna bring back my co-host. Let's see. You got anything else to say? Any other comments?
First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone who stayed from the beginning of this. People come and go. We understand you've got lives, but the thing that we're trying to do here is make sure that you can enjoy your life, enjoy it safely. These are rather unprecedented times that we are living in right now. I don't want to bring politics too deeply into it, but let's face it, Octavia and I are in the DC area. You know, we're in an area that is seeing some interesting things go by. And right now, especially with Octavia's background in immigration law, this is a vital time to have attorneys and lawyers who look like the people who are being targeted and arrested. Like I said, I don't want to go too far in the politics. That's all I'm going to say. But honestly, anything at all that you can donate. You think that maybe your $5 doesn't matter, but if we get $5 from 100 people, that's one scholarship. So thank you once again so much for being with us tonight, for listening to this information. I also want to thank everybody who's going to rewatch it and share it on YouTube and all of the other platforms to help Octavia get the word out. We truly, truly appreciate you. Thank you for hanging in with us for the last 90 minutes. We're going to call it a night, but before we do, I just want to point out one last time that cute little duck QR code up in the corner. Use it, share it. You know what to do. Let's make it happen. Please and thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Mia. So, if you are on your phone, you can take a screenshot, and then I know for iPhones, once you go to your photos, you'll be able to click on that QR code, and then it'll take you to the link, which will allow you to purchase one of these enamel pins. We only have 50 of them in stock right now, so make sure you go right away to purchase it because I can tell you they'll probably be sold out by the end of the week next week. Um, and we can definitely purchase more if you're interested, but you want to be a part of the first round of people to get one of these pins. So hurry up and click that link. Another way for you to donate is to go to our website and donate there. It's called blackbarapplicantfund.org or blackbarapplicantfund.com. That is another way for you to just donate if you don't want to also purchase a pin. I am going to leave this up for 5 more minutes for people to comment anything, leave in the comments anything that you want to say, anything that you want to ask, for people to start donating to the Black Bar Applicant Fund, and for people to purchase the pins. So at about 8:35 Eastern Time is when I will shut off the stream. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, I think the volume is still working. It was saying the volume went out. I think it's still working.
All right, so there's 13 people still watching. If there is anything you want to share, anything you want to say, now is the time. We'd love to hear from you. Drop into the comments what your most important or biggest takeaway was. Thank you, KB. Thank you, Naji. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you. All
Nia,
of the Nia, thank you to all of the anonymous people who were sending questions. We really appreciate you. If there is anything that you would like to know more about for a future webinar, drop that into the comments also. Somebody will be checking Facebook, somebody will be checking Instagram, somebody will be checking YouTube. Your comments matter.
LinkedIn as well. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. So LinkedIn as well. This fund is for us and by us because ain't nobody coming to rescue us except us. And that's all I want to
Exactly.
say about that.
Exactly. It's been us since the beginning. I showed you all some books at the beginning. We've got Making Civil Rights Law, and that book shows how we have been the catalyst for change in our community from the beginning. We got another comment. It says there's also the bias of the character and fitness process and the lack of diversity on those committees. Yes, we're not going to have diverse lawyers on the character and fitness committee because we don't have a diverse set of lawyers in the profession. The character and fitness test is another aspect of the licensing process that is racist. So, the book that I was talking about earlier called The Best Men of the Bar, that was another book that talks about all of the different ways that they integrated racism into the legal profession. And it didn't stop at um, accrediting the law school. It didn't stop at the bar exam. It went into the character and fitness process. Black people were not passing the character and fitness process because they were specifically pointing out areas where Black people probably wouldn't be able to pass that character or fitness, and they were making that a requirement to pass. And that persists to this day. So yes, good point, Najee. There's also the bias of the character and fitness test. And then KB asks, will there be a recording release? Yes, we recorded this stream and we will release it afterwards. You'll be able to find the recording on our Instagram, on our YouTube, and then we'll also provide a link on our Instagram after this. Good question. And then we got Joy. Thank you for your advocacy on this subject. It is much needed. Thank you so much for everybody that showed up and that's still here that cares about the topic. It's super important to me that I see an equal representation in the legal profession, and that honestly, these relics of the Jim Crow era are gone. It is not fair that a few very racist white people decided we want a white profession, and they got their way until today. So just one more reminder before I get off that we have our enamel pens for sale. They're $20, includes all of the taxes and shipping. Just follow that QR code at the top left of the screen. On my side, it's the top left, and you'll be able to purchase an enamel pin. Go to our website, blackbarapplicantfund.com. You'll be able to donate. Soon we'll add a link onto our website as well for you to be able to purchase the pin. And yeah, we have a consistent newsletter coming out every week where we talk about all of our initiatives. We'll talk about our book coming out, other readings that you can do to learn about the subject. You'll be able to purchase a pen from there. So make sure you are subscribed to our newsletter. You can do that by just going to our website. Donating will get you subscribed, and sending us a message on there will get you subscribed. All
Thank
right.
you so much, Octavia. This has been an incredible, incredible webinar, really informative, and we can tell that you're passionate about this. Thank you, everyone who stayed. Thank you, everyone who's going to share the links out. Thank you for
Yeah.
helping to
Yeah.
promote the Black Bar Applicant Fund.
Thank you. Everybody have a great evening. I will see you on the other side of this webinar. Let's keep the conversation going.